Oh, nice.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We've got people joining us. Welcome. My name is Nick Simino. I'm the outreach coordinator for Delgado Community College's Computer Information and Computer Network Technology programs, as well as computing program. This is our career speaker series. This is the first one of the 2022 semester, and we are excited to have Mr. Lumen Vera, head coach of Loyola Esports and CEO of Crescent Esports, here with us today to talk about his experience related to technology, and we will have questions at the end. So for the first half or so, we're going to let Lumen take us through his experience, and then we'll have opportunity for open questions towards the end. So please, just if you have a question, save it for the end, and we'll throw it in the chat, or you can unmute. But that's kind of our intro. Lumen, feel free.
Yeah, I'll have the chat open. So if you have a question, like there'll be points in the story where I'll pause and go into asking any questions, because my road to here is by no means a logical linear one at all whatsoever. So like Nick said, I'm the head esports coach at Loyola University of New Orleans now, and I'm also the CEO of Crescent Esports. And as far as esports is concerned in gaming, so I'm 33 now, but I got involved a long time ago, literally just playing with my cousins. We got into a game called Counter-Strike, and we just kind of made the decision of let's start actually competing. Like, let's take this seriously and see where we go with it. And so we did. So I played that for 15 years. Yeah, played it for a very long time. Eventually stopping in college because I finally hit a point where, I mean, I'd been told the entire time, like, gaming and esports is not going to take me anywhere. So I kind of just finally started to believe that idea, only until years later to figure out where to go. In the middle of all that, so I graduated at SDSU. I have a degree in anthropology and archaeology. Like I said, completely nowhere near where I'm at right now. From that, to be honest, like, I graduated school and I had no idea what I wanted to do, even with the degree, even with what I had thought I was trying to get into. So the very first thing that I did was I volunteered and started working at a wolf center over in California, Julian, California Wolf Center. I was there for a year and a half, worked with wild wolves, did a lot of public speaking, did a lot of public education. And from there, I got hired at a place called the Ocean Institute over in Orange County, which we taught California history, maritime history, marine biology, and California ecosystems. So it was a wide array of different things, history and science. And I was teaching fourth graders to college to even like kindergarten. So it was just a huge spectrum of students of what I was teaching and where I was learning from. But to be honest, that is probably where I learned the most on how to teach, how to do team building, because those are the skills and those are the programs we ran. While that was happening, I started getting back into esports. I started getting into Overwatch. Really, really pushed hard on that. Went semi-pro there, and realized instead of creating teams, what I was doing instead of competing is that I was mainly doing.
What are you doing? I'm trying to see if you can hear me.
I was mainly doing coaching. I was a lot of managing the team. I was playing the captain, so I was doing a lot of different roles. And I'll touch base on this kind of aspect because this is something that I try to make sure my players don't have to deal with. Because if you're a player, you should focus on playing. Don't try to wear all the many hats that esports is going to require you to do at some point. So from there, excuse me 1 second. Sorry. We have allergies going on around over here, and it's really like messing with everyone. Thank you. From there, I realized a lot of my skills were in coaching because I was teaching most of the time. And everything I learned and everything that I was doing was everything that I did already in the past when I was working on ships and teaching in science. And then from there, I got really lucky because I got hired on to work for Predator Esports for a little bit. And I coached them. They at the time, this is 2017. they ended up becoming the #1 team in Mexico for Overwatch. And they went to Overwatch has this World Cup, which is kind of like the Olympics for their game. And they ended up playing in it, which was really, really cool. I got to see some of my players on the big stage, which was nice. From there was kind of a couple of personal things that happened. And I hit a point where I was living out of my car. And a friend of mine who was helping with the team that I was with previously just kind of gave the idea of like, hey, we're not doing anything, so do you want to start an organization? At the time, again, for me, I wasn't doing anything. I was tutoring. I was bouncing around different jobs. I was what you call a brand ambassador, which is essentially when you go to like PAX or Comic-Con, you see the people who are like talking to you, trying to sell you stuff, trying to tell you about the booth that they work at, what's going on, that kind of stuff. So that's what I was doing. And I was working with Coca-Cola, Square Enix was the big one, and Valiant, which is one of the previous Overwatch teams. So again, I bounced around a lot. So we started this org. It was Crescent Esports. It was the first, it was the first New Orleans esports organization, the official one, legal and everything. So we really set the ground for esports in New Orleans and Louisiana. But it was there were a lot of hurdles. For those in Louisiana, there's already some esports going on, kind of. There's like the FGC, which is the fighting game community, which are the grassroots for esports. They're the ones that fighting games started esports in a way. They're the ones that really started doing the competition. They're the ones that really started doing how to get, those quote unquote kind of turf wars where you go to the arcades and show who's the best. You would have East Coast versus West Coast, Japan versus America. And so we had something like that in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And esports to them was kind of like the man, like the government, how individuals certain see that we're like, oh, esports is trying to take away and gentrify what we have going on. So we had to deal with a lot with dealing with the community, working with them. And eventually we built a really nice rapport where we started working together and making esports and fighting games really big, much bigger in Louisiana. From there is when COVID finally hit in the latter half. And hey, yeah, Alex, I love that guy. Alex is great. We still hang out a lot. So from there, COVID hit, which kind of worked out in our favor because a lot of what we were doing was online. For FGC, it hit the FGC really hard, but us as the organization, I was remote for all of this. So I was still living in California. And so it kind of worked out for our favor because we were able to pause and kind of look back and see what we needed to do to change things. That being said, we eventually decided to take a hiatus to see what we wanted to do. And that's kind of where Crescent is at the moment. Luckily, at the same time, one of the other members of Crescent used to be the head coach at UNO. He reached out to my current boss now and said, hey, I got a buddy who wants to work still in esports as a coach. And funny enough, had I not gotten this job, I would have stopped working in esports altogether. It's a really great industry, but there's a lot of like, I won't call it red tape, but there's a lot of politics, even in the commercial industry. There's a lot of things that you have to be aware of. Make sure you're not stepping on people's toes. It's a little bit tiresome. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to step away, maybe get back into it eventually later. But then no, I got the job here, and now I'm here, and we have this. I'll kind of show it off a little bit. We have this really nice facility, 20 PCs, a couple of switches. It was It took like 2 weeks to make. I never want to make desks again.
If you ever make us make desks, I will kill myself. We'll all hate you for all of eternity.
As you can see, the student reps also agree. Desk making is rough. For the most part, that's my story. Feel free to ask questions. If you want anything more in depth of anything or need to expand on something, let me know. I'm going to mute for a second and drink water and clear whatever the hell is going on in my throat right now.
Thanks, Lumen. Yeah, you can take a minute. Yeah, so thank you for being here. For those of us who kind of joined a little bit through the presentation, Lumen Vera is the head coach of Loyola Esports at Loyola University, New Orleans. And he's also the CEO of Crescent Esports. And we're thankful to have him, with us here at Delgado today to talk about our career speaker series. So he kind of gave us an overview of his career, originally from California, and now working here in New Orleans. So if you've got any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. I've got a few of my own once Lumen feels ready to answer them. But as someone who grew up here in New Orleans all my life, I'm always excited when we get exciting new folks contributing to this area. So that would be my first question. Like, is anything that drew you, aside from kind of like the work aspect, New Orleans in particular, and how do you feel about the place and the space now that you're here?
So the initial thought of starting in New Orleans was mainly because that person was working here or lived here. But he did bring up the idea of like, we should make a city-based organization, not a like, oh, we have a Cloud9. We have a Cloud9 or like a Liquid, but that you have like a New Orleans Crescent or something like that. Funny enough, it was just this idea was brought up right before Overwatch, excuse me, and Call of Duty started doing the Los Angeles Thieves or the London Spitfire, having those cities and having those areas kind of be the representation. So after that was all happening, seeing how New Orleans is. Louisiana is an interesting thing with esports because it's coming here in comparison to, I'd say, like Seattle or Southern California, New York or Florida, Texas. Those have established esports scenes. So they're further along when it comes to the competition. Louisiana was like 5 years behind, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's kind of like a blank slate, where we as individuals from California who've been in the scene a little longer and have something more developed can take that information, can take what we already knew, bring it here to Louisiana and help it develop even at a quicker rate, which is what happened. So we set up a lot of opportunities working with the local fighting game community, also trying to build with the local government and basically getting stuff underway and pushing esports to the front of what's going on, which is now a lot of what we see now is a lot of schools are pushing to have esports programs, especially in Louisiana. So that's really nice. All in all, I'm used to California, which to me kind of felt and looked the same in the little pocket that I was in. New Orleans is extremely diverse, so I thought that was really, really cool. I'll go to Daniel and then Alex, and then I'll go down the line. So Daniel's asking, topic of hurdles. What was the memorable one? Ooh, I would say living out of my car and be like, okay, let's start an esports organization. I don't know what that means, but let's do it. And then I would say maxing out credit card after credit card to kind of just get things going, and it just kind of worked out. I would say the biggest thing that I learned, and the reason it's most memorable, is because it just made me realize if you want to get something done, you just do it. You have to start doing it, regardless of the situation you're in. You just go. You just start doing it. You know, if and it's easier said than done. Obviously, there's a lot of complexities in life, but at some point, you got to take that first step. You just got to start somewhere, somehow. To be fair, I will say, don't take my route. Don't immediately jump into the deep end, and tried doing everything. Definitely look into stuff. Definitely reach out. Definitely talk to people and see how they did it. I just happen to be kind of an idiot in that way. So I just jump in the deep end and be like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to swim here and go from there. Internships for IT students at Loyola, not yet, at least to my knowledge, or I think it's something that you'd have to go through the computer science degree, or the program. But here at Loyola, we're trying to basically marry the esports program and the computer science program so that they can work together, so that we do have something that they can. So if they're doing something for computer science, they're doing something for the esports program and vice versa.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to ask. Just took over as the chair for our IT section. Man, you know, that would be a cool thing to send a few students over and have them help you set up some devices.
There are, so what I plan on, as far as internships, that's something I know we have to go through the school, and that's mainly because like that term means something else entirely, but on a legal side, so they have to like.
We could call it something else,
right?
Okay, like I'm not opposed to a field trip. But yeah, I was just curious if that was an established thing yet over there.
No, I'm currently working with I'm currently reaching out to some software developers to see like, hey, can you do like a hackathon where we can just try to break your stuff? Because I know there's a couple students that would be interested in that, and I know they like talking to them, they're interested in it because they want to see like, okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when you try to override and break our things. So yes, it's in the works. Short answer. Some demand opportunities for the world of esports related to IT education experience. Within esports, specifically with IT education, I would say there are demands for like if you're dealing with like the tech side of stuff, building up PCs, like the actual motherboards, doing all that stuff. I know there's big for that. I know as far as like getting the experience, there are programs like there are companies like Logitech and Asus, MSI, who are working to build programs for education to help them for students or anyone who's interested to learn and gain the experience they have working as a manufacturer and also working within that realm of like buying and selling those kinds of parts. I will say I don't have, and when it comes to like specifically IT education experience, that's something I would need to ask those companies to see what they're looking for. I know with what we're trying to do here, we have a currently like a mentorship program is what we're trying to do, where the students learn how to talk to companies like that. They learn kind of the back end stuff of what they have, but basically what I'm trying to get the students to understand is like they're going to get the experience so that they know how to talk to these companies and work with them, so that when they leave college, asking for money or dealing with the sponsorship isn't such a scary thing. Chris Martinez, you asked, what advice do I have for a 30-year-old who wants to just in the tech world and where to start? I share your same journey from the college standpoint and now wanting to get back into tech. I would say find something that like, if there's something you have an idea of like in the tech world, like you can just find interesting, just start doing something, whether it be building a PC and just starting that. Doing content creation is probably your best bet if you want to get your name out there for whatever you're trying to do. There are various ways to get started, but I think within this world, within esports, within this landscape that we have now, content creation is king. So if you can do something similar to like Linus Tech Tips, or if you can do something similar to I forget what their channel's called, but essentially they do like setup wars where people send pictures of their setup and the guy talks about them and goes into the nitty gritty of like what they're using, how it operates and that kind of stuff. I know there's another esports channel that is starting to do, they're breaking down the general idea. So for example, they like an episode of theirs is like, does mouse DPI, does mouse sensitivity really matter? So you have a person talking it from a general perspective of like how players see their mouse DPI, their mouse sensitivity. And then you have a tech person actually being like, well, this is what it actually does. So you can do something like that. Find whatever it is that you're interested in, try to figure out a way to make content around it. What is one resource? So moving to Kia Jackson, what is one resource that you may share that has been a big help to on your journey from living in a car to esports? I would say, adaptation. Anytime I maxed out a credit card, I was like, okay, I now have to figure out a way to like pay this off. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to figure it out. So having this immediate, putting myself in situations where I immediately had to adapt and conquer the situation somehow, some way, which is why I got so many little jobs. I would say so it's maybe not just one resource, really, it's making connections. There's probably, if I were to narrow it down, is having those connections. Because I reached out to a lot of people to be like, I need a job here, I need a job here, I need a job there. And luckily a lot of these jobs were not one-offs, but essentially like contract work. So I was free to work on my own schedule, and they had moments where I would go to an event, work that, get the money from that, use that to pay off the credit card, so on and so forth. Even when I finally moved back home, it was still, what's the next thing? The adaptation, that kind of like that rush of what's moving forward and continuously moving forward and using the connections that I made to continue building on what I already had. What is the work culture like in California, and what are the skill sets desirable to succeed in the career space? In California, I guess it depends where you're at. California, the only thing I can really compare between the two, between here and California, is that California's quicker pace. California, especially Southern California, like I'm originally from San Diego area, but I lived around the LA area. People are always on the go. They're always trying to look for the next thing. They have to. It's kind of that's the area that you're in. If you're wanting to make it big, if you're wanting to work on your own stuff, you have to move on to the next thing. You have to find, if this doesn't work, cool, move on to whatever the next thing is. That doesn't work, cool, adapt, go on, so on and so forth. Skill sets that are desirable to succeed in the career space is really, if I were to narrow it down to maybe like one, it is that drive. Having that drive to continue when you're constantly dealing with like, this didn't work, okay, we made a mistake here, we got to learn from that, and then finally figuring out what works. The biggest skill set I would say is time management. You need to be able to work on making sure that you're setting aside time for yourself, time for your work, and time for anything else that you have. So from there, I would say the skill sets start to rain down from that main one. Golden tip or advice to give new upcoming IT engineers, which can help them with their journey. I don't think I have anything specifically for like IT engineers. Again, my biggest advice for anybody trying to get into something new or trying to get into something that they're not sure of what to do is just start somewhere. It doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter how big you start, but just start. You're going to eventually figure it out. You're going to figure out what works. You're going to figure out what doesn't. And then you quickly just adapt and change and tweak what is working for you and make sure that it's all coming together. Reach out to companies that you're interested in. You can directly ask them, hey, I'm looking to get into this field. is there anyone that I can talk to? Or if you can tell me what it is that you guys look for in this career field or in this company or in this position. Most likely they either just don't respond, or they might send you like, hey, this is our job description, or they might actually reach out and have a conversation with you. Either way, your best bet is reaching out and talking to people. Describing esports and what esports encompasses. So esports, the definition is, oh God, the word just escaped me, is organized competitive gaming. So instead of just being like, oh yeah, I'm going to play, Counter-Strike right now or play Valorant for a little bit, it is, no, we have a schedule. We're going to be a team of 5v5. There's leagues, there's rules, there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it, versus, again, just casually just playing a game. What esports encompasses, I would argue everything, because when you look at looking back here, it's not just, oh, we're just gamers, we just play games. We have people who to get to this point, we had to work with manufacturers. I had to work with brokers. I had to work with tech people to make sure that this is up and running smoothly. I had to work with various other people just to make sure, like graphic designers, to get the logo. I had to make sure to work with the students who are all in various different majors to make sure that this is aesthetically pleasing, that this place functions as it should. Just to play on a team, you need a coach, you need a manager, you need, the captain, there's various positions. When you go to an event, there are people doing lighting, there's stage direction, there's hosts, there's doctors in there, there's psychologists, there are chefs. Esports encompasses a lot of space and many jobs that you may not have realized. So if you're interested in working in esports, you can take what you do and apply it. So just to use a psychologist or a doctor, you can become a sports psychologist, a sports medicine doctor for esports, because that's what's really big. Biggest game in esports? I don't know. That's a hard answer. Because every game has its own community. League is humongous, worldwide, globally. Dota is very, very big as well. It's not as big here in the States, but it's humongous everywhere else. Counter-Strike has been like the grandfather of FPSs. And that's been around for a very long time. Maybe, honestly, let me just quickly look up the viewership. Maybe that might answer the question. Okay, it's Dota 2. Unexpected, Dota 2. It is, most viewership on Dota 2 is 17.2 million hours. Dota 2 also boasts the biggest prize pool. It was about, I think 4 years ago, 24 million, jumped up to 34 million, 44 million, and I'm sure it's going to be way bigger even now. So I think for the most part, maybe Dota 2, even though I know around here there's not many people that play it, but it's a huge, huge game. Any other questions? Also, again, sorry for the biological functions that seem to be missing here.
Lumen, this is a question I have. If someone were to pursue this kind of like at a semi-pro level, do people focus on one, find people who are kind of like proficient in multiple?
In one game, you said?
Yeah, I mean, is that, like sometimes, you'll have these Olympians who are competing in multiple events. I mean, is professional esports or just esports in general, do people usually have like a game that they focus on?
Usually, yeah. Usually they stick to one. they focus on one just because the time commitment is so much. Some players will play many, but mostly they'll stick to one game. There might be a player within the game that plays various roles. So if we're using League as an example, you might have somebody who's like, oh, like I'm a bit ADC player, but I also can play mid lane, or I can also play top lane. They'll specialize maybe in something, but they'll have a skill set that allows them to do various things. In games like that in Overwatch, versatility is very key. But for the most part, players stick to one game because it's difficult to jump between many. Especially at the highest level, you're constantly traveling, you're doing different things, you're scrimming, you're practicing. There is a lot of time put into the games that you go into. So multiple times, a degree in game design is irrelevant. Would esports or something of the sorts be an area to take interest in? I would not say a degree. So to get into esports, you don't need a degree. I would argue the same thing for game design. However, the reason you should do it still is the connections, it's the network. You need to start somewhere and start with people that are already connected so that you can start getting into it, and find out who you can connect with. It also depends where you go. I will say, for example, in Germany, in Belgium, actually, there is a school that a friend of mine goes to called DAE, and a lot of worldwide, globally renowned game designers are teachers there. So that is a good place to go to. That's an example of something that you'd be like, cool, I don't really need the degree. However, I'm working with people that are really big in the industry and can teach me and show me what is expected. That's what you're going to run into. And that's to go on that a little bit more. That's what I tell my students. I'm like, I know you don't need a degree to come here. You can go on YouTube, you can go on Skillshare, you can figure it out on your own. However, that's you on your own. You're going to be trying to figure out the networks. You're going to try figuring out talking to people on your own. And for the most part, several students I know have issues with that. It's difficult to build a network on their own. They don't have that skill set yet. So that's where I come in and help them with that. I've ran into students who already, before they even come here, they're like, I already run my own business. I'm like, cool. You're like 10 steps ahead of everybody else. But the biggest thing is you're going to the schools, you're going for these degrees to build a network. You're not going for the piece of paper. Oh, yeah, let me look at that real quick so you can see the prize pools, how they've grown since 1998. Man, Quake 2 was huge. What is there to see in someone who can become a really good player in the esports field? Brianna, just to Ambarina, just to make sure that I'm answering this, do you mean what makes a good player? What separates a good player from a maybe like a normal one or a decent one? I'll see if I can answer, and then you tell me if this answers your question. So if you're asking like what I look for, that kind of sounds like what's the question is. Some person has a sense of, okay, cool. The biggest one is proactiveness. An individual who is just going to do something because they want to do it. They're the ones that like think about the game. They're the ones that are just practicing and doing what they want to do and spending the time to put in the effort without anyone prompting them to do it. This is how do I put it? This industry, especially at a pro level, is a high risk, high reward. So you're going to put in a lot of time, you're going to put in a lot of effort, and you may not get anything in return for a while. I'm using myself as an example. From 10 to now, that's 23 years where I did not see I would quote, maybe say like a return. And so, but nonetheless, I kept at it. Not to say that's going to be the case for everybody. To be fair, like I stopped at some point. Had I not, maybe I'd be somewhere different. But for someone to get into it, you have to put in a lot of effort and a lot of time. You have to also make sure that the time you're putting in is something that's actually worthwhile. Using myself as an example, had I known what I know now and applied it to myself at a younger age, when I was competing, I would have used time to make videos. I would have time to build content. I would have used time to get my name out there, use more social media, instead of just kind of going on tournaments and playing with my cousins or playing with friends or stuff like that. So when I look for a good player, the first thing I ask is, are you going to dedicate enough time and effort into this? Before I even find out if they're good or not. Skill is something you can learn. That proactiveness, that drive is not. That's something that can be taught, but it's going to take a while. And if a student doesn't have it and they don't want to do it, it's kind of like, what's the point? As far so that's the main thing I look for when I'm talking to students interviewing them. I ask them, like, what are expectations that you have of the teammates? What are expectations that you have of me, of the school? And a lot of times they will say, you know, I want them to have this drive. They need, like, I want them to be able to be on the same page as me. The big thing is making sure that we've all done school projects, making sure that we don't have that one person that's just there, doesn't do anything, and you're constantly being like, why are you here? The big thing is making sure that you are not that person. If you are going to put in the effort at the time to do this, talk to people, see what it is, and go from there. Like, get a lay of the land, understand and have conversations like we're having now. I will say, feel free to reach out to me more if you'd like, and that's fine. But do make sure, you know, you are getting a good idea of what area of esports that you want to get into. As far as the PC specs, the PC specs we have right now, I don't have them fully on hand. Maybe what I can do is just find the actual PC that we have.
Lumen, while you're doing that research, I'm going to chime in. That was the question from Alex, our department chair for our computer technology and computer network and computer information technology programs here at Delgado. So, you know, we have a lot of Delgado students here, you know, viewing this event. We are, you know, obviously interested in trying to bring some of this activity onto our campus. We haven't been, you know, as loud about it on campus here yet, just because we're kind of in the planning stages. But I think this is a good place to start sharing those rumors here with our students that we're trying to get in the game, as it were. So, you know, if anybody's interested, they should certainly reach out to me, and my contact information I will share when I post the video of this onto YouTube. But that's just kind of a heads up. I know that there's some work that needs to be done as far as procuring hardware and, you know, working with, you know, school IT to make sure that we have space and that we can do all of these things on campus. So that's kind of our kind of, you know, at that office level, you know, what was the work that had to go into creating that space or setting that up on?
As far as setting everything up here, so the league that we work in, that we operate in, is called NACE. They had connections already to business to business, B2B companies. So CDW is one that we reached out to. Esports Supply was another one. Both are really good. I just chose CDW because they were just easier to talk to for me. But both are really, really good. They're easy to talk to. They're very welcoming. But they're individuals that you can just talk to. So you don't have to do the whole thing of talking to MSI directly. But what you can do, and what I would suggest, is talk to them, see if you can get in touch with somebody from MSI if you're trying to build an esports scene or esports room, because there are a lot of companies like Logitech and MSI and Asus who are wanting to be like, yeah, we'll work with you. We'll try to see if we can get you, if you need headsets, if you need mice, if you need keyboards, either they will do loans or they will donate it altogether. Do that, see if you can just talk to people, see what they're willing to give you. And then of course, you know, if you're needing to purchase stuff, then purchase. Oh, that's the next thing. As far as IT, we have a good relationship with our IT. Luckily, the individual in the back, Caleb, Caleb's also a really nice IT, like super crazy IT individual who has helped run everything and make it run smoothly. Without him, there are a lot of things that I wouldn't have been able to do as quickly as we have. So because of him, you know, we set up we're on our own virtual LAN. This room is now isolated to itself, which was something that I never would have thought about until maybe like a year or a few months into this.
Yeah, that was actually one of my pitches. I was trying to get us put on a virtual LAN so we wouldn't have those type of conflicts with the security and the rest of the school. So yeah, if any other tips or tricks that you can share with us about getting past friendly IT department would help.
Here, Caleb, this might be better. This might be better for Caleb, just straight answer.
What?
The question is being asked of like any tips that for like when you're creating a room, what are like either walls that you're probably going to run into, and you can say like the stuff that we ran into and the stuff that we deal with, and also things of like what are things to expect to run into.
Like problems and things I've done.
Yeah.
Well,
Make sure your desk have all the parts that they need to properly be put together.
okay, so basically what we've done so
You can get
far.
closer.
Oh, basically what we've done so far is like isolating ourselves so we're not susceptible to outside people coming into our room network wise. We've also set up like just Ethernet runs. You like Wi-Fi isn't like the best for esports. You're gonna want Ethernet specifically because Ethernet doesn't have the chance of dropping in and out like Wi-Fi does. Heat's another issue, so you have to keep it very cold because when you're dealing with like 20 machines like us and 20-25 people,
Yeah.
it gets pretty hot pretty quick.
We lucked out in the setup that we have it as open as we do, and the AC unit is in the middle that spreads on both sides.
And another thing that you do want is endpoint protection. So that like prevents our users specifically and other people externally from downloading EXEs that could cause issues, or thing like viruses is one of those. What you also specifically need to do is lock down management profiles. So people cannot like get into command prompt file system. You're restricting access for your users because it is a public account. And we don't have as much firewall issues. We have more issues with our endpoint protection because I don't control that. That's something IT controls. So you have to think about that when you're going to use like a school's endpoint or someone else's endpoint, which you need an endpoint for security. Because otherwise you run the risk of having people being able to do what they want on the machines, and that endpoint just blocks it all out.
We got lucky that we're able to work very easily with our IT group because with our endpoint there are certain games like Valorant, Halo, Rainbow Six that had issues with the endpoint. They just wouldn't run. So we had our head of IT come down, work with us, and slowly be like, okay, what EXEs need to run through? What does the endpoint need to let through for this to run? So those are that's probably, if anything, probably be the biggest thing, because that's something that's like immediate. Like if you're going to run Valorant, Halo, Rainbow Six, you need to make sure that the endpoint or whatever the endpoint system that you have that you're running doesn't block it.
Gotcha.
And then making sure if you have several machines, I would say more than 20, that you're not on the same switch. Because we have everything on one switch, and it definitely causes issues if people want to stream on Discord, stuff like that.
Now, is that the switches issue, or is that the backbone
That would
to the
be
switch?
that would be the switches issue. Because when we do have like 20 machines, they're all sending data to the switch. And we're on our own VLAN, so it kind of just overwhelms it a bit. If you split it up, you're having two separate places it's going. So that would increase your speed and upload because it's separating to 10 and 10. So you'd be getting better speeds, better uploads, just better network performance in general.
Do you have fiber backbones from your switches back to your main network, or is it?
I would assume, I don't know what IT does. I would assume because we are getting put on 10 gig. So I would assume we have fiber, but I'm not for sure.
Okay.
Deal with that.
You go.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Oh, I did just.
So yeah, these are, luckily I have him to help me with that. And making sure that we're running everything. I would say I've talked to a couple other schools about like LAN management software. So like Tactics is one that I looked at, which is a cloud-based, and then there's GG Rock. GG Rock is they have an actual like physical PC for you to use for your server, which is like 18,000 a year, which is I don't know if that's worth it, but I've heard people who talk about it. It works really well. Tactics is a cloud-based. For us, for 20 years, I think they want to charge us like 4K, 5K a year. But we found some pretty easy success with just having the computers free of that. All it is just making sure that we're being prompted anytime somebody wants to install something, which, some of the students find very annoying. They're like, oh, like I need a password again, and we might be busy, so they have to wait. But they'll just need to deal with it. Like I'd rather have that than have them freely do that. Like a couple of things we've already seen, two major instances, which, well, I say major, but in comparison to everything else, they weren't really that big of a deal. We had just one student go into the command prompt, which is why we shut that down. Two, we had someone be able to install games without us knowing, which we found later. We still don't know how it happened. So the only thing we could really do is change passwords and do stuff like that. Because again, the thing that you're going to run into with these students is that you will have people like Caleb who, one, can see a password very easily and kind of break through things if they really, really want to, and also students who have an understanding of tech. You're going to run into a lot more of that. But majority just are there who want to play games and do whatever they want to do.
All right, Lumen. So we're kind of hitting the end of our time here. If anybody else has any other final questions, please ask. But I guess my last question would be, do you have any recommendations for a school that has yet to start a program to determine, what is the first step? What is those? I know you've gotten a main theme that we caught today from Lumen was wherever you are, just start with what you have, right? So what do you think we should do first?
If you are not sure where to start and you're like, I don't think we can get PCs maybe in the next year or two, phones, mobile gaming is huge. Mobile gaming is humongous. There are $250,000 tournaments for like mobile COD, stuff like that. A lot of, I will say in North America, mobile gaming is not as big as it is elsewhere, like Singapore. And that's just because we have the tech in Singapore, especially in areas that don't have as much Wi-Fi or as much internet. They use mobile gaming, and it's huge around the world. So that's something that you can definitely start with. You don't need to start with 20 PCs. You can start with 5 or 10. You can start small. Understand, and I'm very much a thing of like, go big or go home situation. But I will also say you don't need to do that. As far as connections to Riot Games, I am working on that. I have like, what is it? A 2-step to a connection. So I have like a friend of a friend who knows somebody. So I'm trying to bypass that to get to that, to do that. But honestly, the best thing that you could do, and this is something that the dean from Nebraska, I think Lincoln University, told me. She just reached out to somebody. She just reached out to like some big content creators. Find somebody within the industry that is from your area, maybe, and be like, hey, we're from here. We know you're from here. We want to know like your story, kind of what we're having here, and want to see if you can help us figure out what we can do to best build our program and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that I will say when starting a program is community first, competition second. Your program is going to go nowhere if you don't have a community for it. Yes, you will have people who compete, but those are like, in comparison to the large community, the competitors are niche. It's a very small minority in comparison to the rest. There are a lot of people who play WoW. There are a lot of people, or World of Warcraft. There are a lot of people who play Valorant. Excuse me. A lot of people who play Overwatch, which are not the highest level. Put it this way, you can put it into the ranking system. You have top 500 in Overwatch, but there are hundreds of thousands of people who play it. So it's a small minority who are at that level and who want to compete. Make sure what you're building is a community. Make sure you're being inclusive. Make sure you're figuring out ways to include other people and do what you can to make it lower the barrier of entry. And as far as like with Delgado, myself and Nick are trying to build a connection between both Loyola and Delgado, which I would definitely love. Anything that I can do, I will say this, feel free to reach out to me personally. I'll put my info in the chat, how to get a hold of me. But just, if you're wanting to build something, try building it with it. It's the same thing as like you're that house that people come to play video games for food. That's the same idea. That's what you want to build. Only now you have, tech and a bunch of other stuff.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Lumen. This is about time. I'll share your contact information. This video recording that we just did today, this will be on YouTube, hopefully by the end of the week. So if if there was somebody who you think might appreciate this, who didn't get a chance to see it, please share. We will have another career speaker series at the end of September, so be on the lookout for that. And that's that. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day, and please stay tuned as we develop more kind of esports programming here at Delgado.
Thanks,
Thank you
Lumen.
guys. Thank you. All right, bye.